All right, guys, and this week we have Terry McDougall with us, author, executive coach, bringing some great advice to start 2021 out on a good note. Terry, welcome to the show.
George, thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem, no problem. So, Terry, just to kind of start us off, tell us a little bit about who you are, kind of your background, what got you to the point where we're at today to being an executive coach, helping big companies and clients achieve their goals and moving forward.
Okay, well, let's see. Where do I start? I'm an executive and career coach, like you mentioned, and I'm also the author of a book called Winning the Game of Work. I am a wife. I've been married for 25 years. I have 3 kids. They're ages 17 to 23. Before becoming a full-time coach, I worked in the corporate world for 30 years as a marketer. And the last 12 years, I led marketing for several businesses at a large bank. And what led me to this, honestly, when I look back over my life, I have really been coaching and teaching and that kind of thing for my whole life. I'm the oldest of 4 girls in my family. And, so I naturally was just helping people. And then even when I first got out of college, I would help people with their resumes. I'm just naturally kind of a problem solver. And when I felt like I needed to do something different, I started thinking about what do I like to do and what do I feel like I'm good at. And coaching and mentoring was something that just really came naturally to me as a leader. And so I decided to get a certification in coaching, and I guess you could say the rest is history.
Nice. Now, with the book, you said it was the title of the book was. Can you go over that one more time?
Yeah, the title of the book is Winning the Game of Work, and the subtitle is Career, Happiness, and Success on Your Own Terms.
Awesome. Now, as we roll into 2021, 2020 was its own.
Yeah.
We'll just kind of leave
it.
Yeah,
black swan. Yeah, crazy.
Oh, now, what would you say to someone going into 2021 that may have that question of, okay, this is the year I kind of figured out who I was in 2020. I had a lot of time to think.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm looking at my career in 2021, I would say would probably bring in a lot of new adventures for folks that if they want to go about moving careers or even evaluating their career to find that true happiness, what would someone need to do, or how would they go about kind of taking that journey to finding happiness in their
Yeah, I love to talk about that. I think the very most important thing when you want to make a change is getting super clear on your goal. A lot of times people just kind of have an uneasy feeling that something doesn't feel right? But they don't really spend the time to do some introspection, to really look inside to determine what is it that I really want. Because when we can get in touch with that, that gives us the energy to fuel all the activity that's going to be required to actually achieve that goal. And one of the things that I notice a lot with people that I work with is that initially they will self-edit, right? They'll say, oh, well, I always wanted to, be an artist, or I always wanted to be this or that. But they'll immediately say, oh, but I'm really not that good, or, I won't be able to make any money doing that. And I always tell people, let's separate these two things. Like, really get clear on what it is that you want. That's one thing.
Right.
And the other thing is, how are you going to get there? Okay. These are two separate things. And once you get clear on what you want, then you can start looking at how you get there. And, and then you just start, putting in small goals of how you bridge that gap between where you are and where you'd like to be.
No, that's great, because, in our first season last year, we talked a lot about that, about the process of, achieving the goal and getting ready and prepare yourself for the goal. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So on a 9 to 5, I'm a project manager. I look at, what can go wrong, what can go right, and I'm a planner at that aspect. And we really wanted to take that same concept, or try to invoke that same mindset into just goal setting. So
Mm-hmm.
as you talk that where we separate it, what are some of the tips that you give your clients to kind of really hone in on what do they really want?
Mhm.
What are some of those steps to figure out what do we really want? Because I feel a lot of people will just generalize something and throw something, really big out there, but they don't
Yeah.
get into some of the details on how or what that goal really needs to be.
Yeah, I think there's a few exercises that I'll have my clients go through to help get in touch with that because, frankly, it's not uncommon for people to have that, have a knot in their stomach and say like, what's going on right now doesn't feel right, but they don't really know what it is that they want. So one thing is to do a values assessment and really take a look at like what's important to me. Is it family? Is it creativity? Is it freedom? And then use that as a lens to look at what's going on in their life right now, and maybe when they're looking at things that they might possibly want to do, to look at that through that lens and say, okay, well, for example, if family time is important to them, and then maybe they're not going to want to pursue a career that is going to require 80 hours a week, right? That just won't make sense. Another thing that I'll have people do is look back over their life and write up success stories of things that they're really proud of and that they liked to do. And then take a look at that and see like, what are the threads that run through all of these things? And then there's one last thing, I guess, is, to notice sensations in their body when they think about things or when they're doing something. And if they're doing something and they get butterflies, or if they think about doing something and they sort of get like that just the butterfly feeling in their stomach, they need to like notice that and say, okay, that's probably something that you really enjoy doing. And so think about how you can incorporate that into your life.
That's great, and that's something that I've heard a lot in regards to just different guests on really figuring out someone's values before they actually set up that goal. Now, once we've figured that out, and we move into how do you structure or help clients structure that process? Because I feel a lot of people that's where the breakdown really happens because
Mm-hmm.
people they figure out what the goal is and then they just jump right in and it's like, here we go. And
Yeah, I think it's really important to like break it down into smaller projects, if you will, right? Not to say like, oh, I want to get a new job, so I have to do all of these things at the same time. It may be like, okay, deciding what you want. Well, maybe you don't know what you want, right? And so that might be, well, okay, I'm going to go out and set up informational interviews with people that are doing things that I think might be interesting, right? So that maybe that's the first step. And, they do that for a couple weeks or a few weeks. And then sort of like reevaluate, well, how do I feel about the things that I've learned? And what does that tell me about what direction I want to go in? And then the next thing might be like, oh, well, you need to update your resume so that it reflects the skill sets and the experience that you want to put out into the marketplace to attract employers. Um, let's see. So anyway, I mean, I guess that's it. Just to break it down into smaller, achievable goals. And I do know sometimes people will have a hard time getting started because it seems like it's such a monumental task that they're undertaking. But I always say, like, okay, what is the minimal thing that you can do? It's like that's so small, you absolutely can't fail at it. Like that's the first step. And it could be like getting out your notebook and writing down your commitment to the thing that you want to do. It could be picking up the phone and calling someone, or it could be Googling something. That could be the very first step to achieving your goal.
no, that's awesome. And one thing that I preached a lot of last year was the idea, and I'm sure my listeners just got tired of hearing this. I pretty much said it every episode, was you have to take out the pen and paper and you have to write it down.
Yeah.
That for me, that is just knowing myself. If it's one thing to type it in a phone or to think about it, but the power of actually writing it down and having somewhere to go back and reference,
Mhm.
what that plan or what that goal was just unbelievable. So I'm glad to hear even just, hey, I need to write something down, on the small steps and things of that sort.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think when you were just talking about that, it was just reminding me of the fact that, I think one of the reasons why sometimes people get lost on their way to the goal is that you've got like both the micro and the macro, right? Like the macro is the big picture, it's the thing that you want to happen, but you have the micro is all of those many steps that you have to take to get there. And very often we're just hypothesizing about what we need to do to get there,
Right.
right? And so sometimes like you're doing something and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm totally in the weeds. But when you're writing it down, if you can go back and kind of take a look at it and say, oh yeah, like here was the next thing that I needed to do, or this was my to-do list, and oh, I've already done like 5 of these things, I didn't even realize it, you
Right.
know.
Now, talk to me a little bit about, the importance, or even I think this tends to be a lot of people's biggest hurdle is you have the goal, you have the plan, but making that jump into action.
Hmm.
How do you help your clients bump that? Because I think a lot of times once people start to write out the plan, it
Hmm.
starts to look a little scary. And then we start to have that self-doubt whether
Yeah.
we actually accomplish this. What are some tips to help kind of get over that hump to start to take the action?
Yeah, accountability is a huge issue, and frankly, I think that's why a lot of people will hire coaches, because it's not that people aren't capable of doing the things; it's just they're not doing them. And whenever you commit to someone, I mean, as a coach, I'll say, okay, well, what are you going to commit to between now and the next time that we talk? Right? What are you
Right.
going to do? And it's funny because sometimes people say, "Well, I know I should do this," and when they say that, I'm like, "Okay, I know that there's something there. So let's dig into that and find out what is that like mental obstacle that's keeping them from taking action." And a lot of times people have sort of subconscious beliefs like, oh, well, I don't want to call somebody and ask for an informational interview because I'm going to be bothering them,
Right.
right? Or they'll think that I'm looking for a job and it's going to feel awkward, right? Or that they not that they're looking for a job, but they expect that person to get them a job, right?
Right.
And so once we like kind of get that out into the open, and then we can, sometimes I'll role play with people. I'll say, okay, well, let's just pretend like I'm that person. What would you say to them? Or we just reframe it in a way. Like I'll say, well, how would you feel if somebody called you and said, hey, can I get 15 minutes to talk to you about what you do for a living? They'd be like, oh, well, if somebody introduced me to them, I'd feel fine about it.
Now, what would you say in because one, I had an episode last year that talked about kind of the inner circle, and you kind of touched on it a little bit
Mhm.
on that accountability. Now, what would you say to someone that may be a little opposed to coaching,
Mhm.
and kind of the benefits of having that outside third party, uh,
Mhm.
kind of brought into your inner circle to help you be accountable?
Well, I mean, not I don't think coaching is for everyone, for a variety of reasons, but that doesn't mean that you can't have somebody that helps keep you accountable. And in fact, I think a lot of times having like an accountability buddy, I mean, a lot of people do it when they're working out, right? That they have a gym buddy. And the reason for that is because, you know, they could just wimp out and not go to the gym on their own. But if, they have to go and pick up their friend to go to the gym with them, and then they don't want to let that person down. And, I think a lot of times we are a lot more committed when we know that we're going to let somebody else down than if we just let ourselves down. Um, but I'm sorry, I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yeah, no, it's because a lot of people, I think out there, and as coaching has become a lot more popular over the last
Mhm.
years, I've always thought it was a great idea, and a lot of people tend to still may be opposed to it.
Yeah,
But,
yeah,
if you
sure.
have somebody out, if we have a listener out on the fence on,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
the benefits of actually having an outside coach as well.
Yeah, I mean, here's one of the things, or this is something that I've seen numerous times in my with clients, is that they've wanted to do something for a long time, and like I said earlier, like when you hire a coach, the coach isn't going to do stuff for you, right? There, it's just like a sports coach, right? That you're going to be a better athlete if you have somebody watching you and giving you feedback and teaching you techniques than if you're just doing it on your own. It's not to say that you couldn't become a better tennis player by going out and like hitting a lot of balls and, watching videos and all that kind of stuff. But if you hire somebody who has seen a lot of, issues and knows what the pitfalls are and has experience in the area that you're looking to improve in, you're just going to probably experience, you're going to have somebody that can show you where the shortcuts are.
Right.
And I've seen it time and again that there's a lot of common patterns that people have when they want to advance in their careers. And I worked in the corporate world for a long time, and I experienced a lot of them myself, right? Where I didn't know why I wasn't being successful, and I actually hired coaches to help me with that. And I've seen it where, say somebody's been looking for a job for a long time, or they're trying to get a promotion, and they've been doing what they think they need to do to get that goal, and they're not getting it. And then we work together, and I kind of shine a light on some things that they didn't see. And then the next thing you know, they've gotten a new job,
Yeah.
or they've gotten that promotion. And so I kind of look at it like it can be kind of a return on investment sort of thing also, that, you can do it on your own. And very likely you will be successful, but are you going to do it like 3 years from now? Or are you going to do it for 3 months from now? And
Right.
how much is that worth to you?
No, I definitely think, as we've gone on about this, and I've talked, in length about doing your homework, doing your research, and things of that sort. And, I feel that coaching is just a whole new wavelength for anybody out there. But I almost think it's almost been like one of those hidden secrets, even in the corporate world, because a lot of people don't really understand that even some of the most successful people have had coaches to
Yeah,
help them along with their business,
right.
not just with their business, but in some aspects of their own personal life. And now it's becoming to the point that, a person like you and me can find somebody that can help, take us to that next level.
Hmm. Yeah, it is kind of interesting, and I guess I was a little bit surprised because I was in corporate, and I remember one. I don't even know why they asked me to come into the room, but the CEO of our division was getting coached on speaking. I mean, because smart people aren't good at everything.
Right.
Right. And so, he could be really good at managing, and he could be really good at the financial aspects, but, maybe he's not a natural speaker. Right. When you rise to that level, part of influencing an organization is being able to project that leadership and to, speak in a way that's very clear and confident. And that doesn't come naturally for everyone. So I think that was an eye opener for me to realize that, if you want to keep getting ahead, you're probably going to need some people to help boost you and, create or develop skills that maybe just don't come to you naturally.
Right. Now, moving into 2021, what have you seen as the trends as we talk, workforce and career happiness? I'm sure 2020, even as a coach
Yeah.
for you, had taught you some new things about what the new workplace is looking like. What do you see 2021 bringing to the overall work experience, and what are some of the things that my listeners can look at as maybe either warning signs or things that maybe, hey, maybe I need to evaluate the happiness of what's going
Mhm.
on in my career if I really want to get to the next level.
Well, in 2020, I mean, obviously there were a lot of people that were laid off this year, and I worked with a lot of people that were in job search. I think one of the things that surprised me was how business just keeps chugging along. I mean, I worked with people that got laid off during COVID. interviewed, got hired and onboarded, and all remotely, right? So I think for some people, they might think like, oh, well, if I get laid off during COVID, that I'm never going to get another job. And that's not the case. I was actually surprised at how active the hiring market is during COVID. And I think that, with the vaccine and the election behind us, that I think the business outlook is more certain, because business doesn't like uncertainty,
Right.
so I think, and also just with the time of year, I mean, just naturally, even when it's not in the time of COVID, generally the beginning of the year is pretty big for hiring. I also noticed that I got a lot of clients that sort of were doing self-evaluation. I think that just staying home, not having to commute, a lot of people really started looking at their lives and careers differently.
Right.
And there were a number of people that hired me like, you know what, I want my life to be different.
Right.
And, I think before they were probably so caught up in their routines that they didn't even have time to think about that. But I really think that this has given people a new perspective and maybe like just a realization that, life is short. And if you're not happy, now's the time to start thinking about what you want to do differently.
Most definitely, most definitely, and I think it truly is. It's in my field, we still went to work every day. I'm in a small office, so
Mm-hmm.
we took our precautions. But like my wife, on the other hand, it's working from home,
Mm-hmm.
and it has brought a new. She did a lot of self evaluation, even in herself, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming people are doing that now, even as we roll into 2021. For you, as you work with different clients, I guess what are some of those signs or things that people can look at to say, hey, maybe it is time to self look at something? What are just some of the common things that you see that people are really just not just feeling unhappy, but
Mm-hmm.
hey, maybe I need to look elsewhere, or maybe I just need to see how I can make it to the next level within my
Mm-hmm.
job. I'm starting to plateau.
Yeah, I think that sometimes people, I think, put a lot of the responsibility for their career on the company or on their boss. And, really, when you work, it's a trade of value, right? Like you're bringing value to the organization, and the organization pays you and maybe gives you opportunities for advancement if you're, providing more value than what, um, you know, or I guess if you're overperforming, right? But sometimes people grow more quickly than the opportunities within their companies will allow them to advance. And I've seen a lot of people that get sort of like upset that they can't advance in the same organization that they're in. And, I advise people like step back and really like think about what is it that you want to do. I guess kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, like, okay, what do you want and how are you going to get there? Right. And, I've actually had people that reported to me in the past where, that were really sharp and maybe just a couple of years out of college. And they just, they learned everything at the junior level very quickly. And they were like, okay, what's next? And I'm like, I'm sorry, like there's a big leap between where you're at and the next level, and we just don't have anything in between. And I've told people, for you to advance, you may need to leave the company.
Right.
um, so and I suppose also not being fearful about that, right? And I was thinking about this earlier when you were talking that it's always important to be building your network, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people are like, they decide that they're going to like fast forward building the network when it's time to look for a job. And I'm like, no, you need to be building your network constantly. And I actually advise people, I mean, I'm a huge LinkedIn proponent, and I advise people get LinkedIn with everybody that you work with,
Right.
or even the person that sits right next to you every single day, because someday you're not going to be sitting next to that person. And, sometimes people leave very spur of the moment and then you lose track of them. And I just personally, when I started my coaching business, some of my first clients were people that I met, 30 years ago at my first job. So you just, and their connections on LinkedIn, right? And you just never know how that's going to serve you in the future. It could be that you're hiring somebody,
Right.
and somebody in your network needs a job, or you need information about something that's going on in your industry, or you become an entrepreneur like me, and people are like, oh yeah, I liked Terry, right?
Right.
I'll check her out. I need a coach, right? I know her.
No, and I think, probably now more than ever on just how the dynamic is, especially here in the US, being able to network, I think has just gotten, you know, a whole heck of a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
And people need to take advantage of that with everything going virtual. Just even like we're talking, me and you right now. It's,
Mm-hmm.
I used to go to meetup meetings and there was people from everywhere, but that was a time commitment of once a week. I had to find the coffee shop that everyone went to.
Mm-hmm.
Now those things are online, and you can now network with just about anybody at any given time that best fits you. And I'm a big proponent of that, because you just never know. It's again, you hand out that business card, or you meet someone, you make that connection.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows, in 3 or 4 years, 30 years later,
Yeah, I know.
that connection can definitely be there. And I think for all my listeners out there, that 2021 should definitely be a opportunity to do that, to look at some of those ideas and some of those online opportunities, just to network and talk and learn something new. But you get contacts from across the board. Now, Terry, tell us a little bit about the premise of the book and where people can find the book.
Okay. Well, the premise of the book is that I think a lot of times people uh, they approach success in the workplace the same way that they approached success in school, right? Which is like, oh, I have to please the teacher. I have to understand what the teacher's expectations are, and if I am a good girl and I speak when I'm spoken to, etc., that I'm going to move up. And that's not the way the workplace is. It's a lot more strategic than that. And, I mentioned it earlier about the whole idea of value. There's really only three ways to provide value in the workplace. It's either you're helping the company make money, save money, or reduce risk. And I suppose in some ways I'm advising people to sort of step back and look at work more like a game, and figure out like what are the real rules that are going to help me win this game, right? Not that whole idea of like, oh, well, if I do a good job, my boss is going to promote me, right? Understand what is it that they're really looking for, and how do you position yourself for that? One of the things that I have noticed with a lot of people is they think, well, if I want to advance, that I have to just work harder and harder. And quite frankly, I don't think that that's really the way to do it. The way to do it is to really understand how to invest your time and energy so that you get the highest payback. And that might mean that you say no to certain things. Like you're not going to volunteer to do the birthday parties, right? Because that doesn't help the company make money, And if you like doing it, that's fine, but don't expect that you're going to get, brownie points and you're going to advance because, you volunteered to do the coffee run in the morning.
Right.
So there's just a lot of tips in the book about, how to look at work more like a game, and to start to really understand how do you influence. I've got a number of exercises in the book. I have a lot of stories from my own career, and I also interviewed 11 people about their career journeys.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes I think people look at somebody who's successful and think that they were just on this like continuous escalator to the top. And part of the reason why I selected the people that I did to interview is because, you'd look at these people and say, wow, they're, so successful. They're a business owner or they're like an executive or something like that. And then when I dig into their story, they're like, yeah, I got fired 3 times. And, I used to have to do presentations and I was so nervous. And these were the coping mechanisms I put in place. And I think it's just helpful to understand how other people, got to where they are, because it's encouraging, right? That to realize that, people didn't, they weren't, sometimes they were scared, right? But they still did what they needed to do to get there.
Most definitely. And where can people find the book?
The book is available worldwide on Amazon. It's also on barnesandnoble.com. I think it might be at walmart.com too.
Nice. And I'll definitely have, a link to where people can find it on the website and here with the show. So those that are looking to purchase it, take a look at it. You can find just about anything on Amazon.
Yeah, true.
I'm sure if they search it on Amazon, they can find it there. Now, Terry, before I let you go, what advice would you give my listeners for 2021 if it was just one piece of advice on moving forward, crushing your goals, and making 2021 an amazing year?
My advice would be to step into your own power. Get in touch with those things that you really want, and know that if you get clear on that goal, you can find a way to make it happen.
Awesome, Terry. Now, where can people find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. My handle is Terry B. McDougall. That's B as in boy. Or on my website at terrybmcdougall.com.
Awesome. And all those links will also be on our website, projectlifepodcast.com. So you'll be able to check out Terry's profile and have links directly, not only to her book, but to her LinkedIn and to her direct website. Terry, thank you for your time and your insight. And I hope you have a great 2021.
You too, George. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.